her talking with
That's
Becca.
what I'm remembering. At least if we had water stations
Yeah,
somewhere.
I think water stations all we need, then
Yeah.
that's their responsibility.
And then, yeah, people can go to it.
Yeah, Hannah. Would you want to check with Becca about maybe some water stations, one on each side and one in the back or something, where people could go back and get a glass of water if they wanted it? Which one? Contact contact Becca because she knows we had in our contract parking was free. Now they may have parked in some place they weren't supposed to. We may not be able to resolve that. Thanks. We'll see what we can do.
Okay, great.
Okay.
We ordained our first woman in 1884, Janet Good, as a ministering sister. And they permitted her to preach, do communion, baptism, everything but solemnize marriages. I'm not sure about the marriage thing. I've never figured out why they prevented that.
Ron, you're reading?
Ordained women.
I'm reading.
All right.
The reason being, Dr. Finch, I figured we were going to be on this thing
All morning. Yeah, he doesn't need to be up here. Why don't you go to that mic
Okay.
to do the reading?
All right.
Also, Bill Hostler, our president.
Then I'll sit down until after lunch.
That's pressure from California.
Thank you for finding your places.
Fundamentalized. That's right. Yeah.
The other thing,
We will
Dr.
ordain.
Finch, if 345 passes, are we going to read that general superintendent thing in its entirety? Or shall we call attention to it and read the resolve that it be adopted?
I think I'm going to do it seriatim. So I'll take it section by section or page by page.
You mean the
The
job description?
job
Yeah,
description.
I think that's a good way.
I think
read all
we have to let them go through
I
it.
get spitless before I get done.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Going to read all that?
All right, thank you for finding your places as we come to order.
Sit on the edge of my chair here.
Let's come to order, please. On page 5 of the memorials section, you will find Memorial 345. Some of you may be wondering why we went from Memorial number 3 to Memorial number 345. It's because the Committee on Memorials not only reviews memorials, but then decides the order in which they'll be presented. Their numbering relates more to where they will end up in the discipline if something is adopted. And so these memorials are not being taken in the sequential number of the memorial itself, but rather in the order determined by the Committee on Memorials. So page 5 has Memorial 345, the one general superintendent model. Our reader is going to be the General Secretary, Dr. Kelly, who will not be introduced every time we have him read for us. We'll simply call on the reader to share the memorial. Let's turn now our attention to Memorial 345.
Whereas during the September 2008 Board of General Superintendents Retreat, the statistical analysis of the past 10 years of the Wesleyan Church in North America was reviewed, and it was noted. There's been a flat attendance growth, averaging 1.5% annually for the last 10 years. 1 out of 4 congregations reported no converts, and 1/2 reported no baptisms each year. 1/3 of all districts are smaller today than they were 10 years ago. Accountability gridlock often exists with leaders at any level for ineffectiveness in producing missional results. Whereas through prayer and reflection, the Board of General Superintendents developed a plan to pulse the nation's felt needs, frustrations, and future hopes. Whereas beginning in the spring of 2009 and concluding in the spring of 2010, the Board of General Superintendents have embarked on a series of over 100 listening forums, focus groups, and consultations involving 2,000 persons, which included the general church district and local church leaders, to gather broad-based input from lay members and clergy in an effort to gain observations from the grassroots. Whereas following the listening events, a summary report of the responses of Wesleyan pastors and key laity was sent to all participants, which consisted of the themes resulting from the 5 questions that guided the conversation at each event. What are your greatest hopes for the Wesleyan Church? What is your church already doing to spread transformational hope and holiness? What are the barriers that prevent or hinder your local church from spreading transformational hope and holiness? What needs to be revived, refined, reinvented, or restructured for the Wesleyan Church in North America to achieve its vision? And how should we be measuring the health and growth of the Wesleyan Church to evaluate our missional effectiveness? Whereas the Board of General Superintendents concluded that from these listening events regarding strategic decisions about the denomination's revitalization and renewal, the need to affirm our Wesleyan holiness identity, to encourage local church growth, to modify district and denominational structures to better serve local churches, and to strengthen missional accountability at every level. Whereas, relying on the data collected, the Board of General Superintendents wrote a white paper on fresh vision, strategic alignment, and connectional accountability, reinventing the Wesleyan Church as a more intentionally missional denomination for the 21st century. Prior to the May, which was sent for review to all district superintendents and members of the General Board prior to the May 2010 General Board meeting. Whereas the General Board reviewed the document and discussed 3 options for the Wesleyan Church to become a more intentionally missional denomination for the 21st century that included missional merger with like-minded holiness denominations, General Church, one superintendent model, General Church, team leadership model. Whereas the General Board at its May 2010 meeting adopted a pilot program that would test a modified one general superintendent leadership model beginning at the adjournment of the meeting. Whereas the model of a one general superintendent with the executive directors of 4 divisions, Education and Clergy Development Division, Church Multiplication and Discipleship Division, Global Partners Division, Communication and Administration Division, was implemented as a pilot program. And on September 28, 2010, the Executive Board of the General Board of the Wesleyan Church reviewed and approved an operational policy appendix for the General Superintendent and Headquarters Executive Cabinet. Whereas at its November 2011 meeting, the General Board reviewed the pilot program and voted overwhelmingly to prepare a memorial for the 2012 General Conference, and whereas it is recognized that this action is not an answer for all the issues that face the effectiveness of the church, but begins by addressing the structures and functions of the general church, which must be followed by district and local church alignment for missional purposes. Resolved that the General Conference adopt the one general superintendent and 4-division model of general church leadership. Mr. Chairman, I move the adoption of Memorial 345.
All right, this comes recommended to us by the Committee on Memorials and therefore is before us and is available to you now for debate. Yes. Go to microphone 8, please.
H.C. Wilson, Global Partners. Mr. Chairman, I've been asked to make a few remarks concerning this important matter and to address questions that may well be in the minds of the delegates here assembled. Let it be clear that I was assigned this task by a committee of the General Board, and I am speaking now in fulfillment of that assignment. It is hoped that these remarks may answer questions and hopefully shed light on the memorial now under consideration. This may also raise questions, and it is important that the delegates understand, please hear me, this is not an attempt to limit debate in any way. but rather is an attempt to inform the body and to indicate some of the process leading to the proposed action. The matter of the 1GS model has been unofficially discussed in restrooms, in the hallways, and over lunch for many years. I was first elected to the General Board in 1984, and frequently across the intervening years, this matter has been bantered about. I mention this only so the body will understand this concept or possibility is neither new nor novel. Further, this topic was frequently mentioned and discussed during the pastors' forums just referenced. In fact, excuse me, those interactions were a significant impetus in bringing the current recommendation forward. The General Board also grappled with this matter in several meetings, reviewed more than one model, and voted strongly in favor of the current proposal on more than one occasion as this moved along. I apologize. Our own institutional history indicates that the present denomination has followed the multiple leadership model since the merger in 1968. From then until 1992, we had 4 GSs, and for the last 20 years, we have had 3, and I served in both of those models. Earlier in our history, we had both multiple and single leadership models with varying degrees of success. The single leader model was replaced by multiple leaders in the 50s and 60s by our 2 precedent denominations. The single leader model followed then, had limited success at best, and was abandoned later. However, it must be noted that the denominational culture and climate then was much different in many ways than it is today. Technology was essentially unknown in that era, and a leader who was expected to do and be all things at all times to all people without much staff support was essentially the order of the day. Further, the rigors of pre-jet aircraft travel were such that extremely long and arduous travel that on some occasions involved months away was the order of the day, especially if traveling overseas. It was undoubtedly a different day. Timing and surrounding circumstances often help to define and even dictate success and failure of leadership structures. The timing and surrounding circumstances of our earlier single leader chapters were most decidedly different than today. An overview that is fair and objective leads to the conclusion that a variety of leadership models can be effective. The early Methodists had multiple leaders almost from the beginning, with the possible exception of Asbury here in the U.S. However, the history of the Methodist movement, especially in North America and Europe over the past decades, is far from heartwarming. How or if or to what extent their leadership model contributed to their present reality is an open question with many opinions. Amongst evangelical bodies, 2 major tracks have been followed and are in current practice, as most of the delegates would realize. The Church of the Nazarene and the Free Methodist Church both follow the multiple leadership model, while the Assemblies of God, the Evangelical Free Church, the Christian and Missionary Alliance, and the Church of God Anderson follow a single leader model because one size does not fit all. It does seem, ladies and gentlemen, that effectiveness of a top of the administrative food chain leader, the effectiveness of that person or persons, has more to do with the individual and their capacity, their skill set, and their giftedness than it does with the system and structure in which they lead. One size does not fit all. Within our structures, we follow the single leader model at district, local church, educational institution, and headquarters department levels. Only at the general superintendent level of the North American General Conference do we practice the multiple leader model. Our internationalization philosophy allows for overseas units of sufficient strength to become general conferences in their own right and to have only a fraternal relationship with the North American General Conference. There are 2 such general conferences that have fraternal delegates present in this building today, the Philippines and Caribbean. Both of these general conferences have only a single general superintendent, as has been the case continuously since they reached general conference status. To the best of my knowledge, there was no serious discussion earlier, nor is there any ongoing presently, to suggest that as a matter of principle they should adopt a multiple leadership model. It is a matter of practical reality and preference, or so it seems. Allow me then quickly for just a couple of minutes to address a few items that may be on the mind of 1 or 2 people in this room. There will without doubt be other questions answered by other people. But please consider this. Number one, is this matter of a single GS a constitutional matter? While general superintendents have authority to rule on constitutional matters, and I do not, of course, a reading of the discipline, however, makes it quite clear that this matter is not a constitutional matter. The Constitution presently clearly states that the General Conference shall elect one or more GSs. So the matter of how many GSs there will be, frankly, ladies and gentlemen, is fully in the hands of this body. Number two, we have heard that the proposed structure was in a pilot project mode for a couple of years. How'd that work out? Yes, there was a pilot, and I was a part of it for 2+ years. In my opinion, the pilot was an honest attempt to test drive the new structure, but it had only limited success. The Board of General Superintendents was still in place, and they had the big stick. 3 of the pilot program members were general superintendents, and the other 2 of us were not. It was an unrealistic group in a sense that really could not truly function as the plan proposes. It did, however, show positive signs that this could really work well in a true executive cabinet structure. The potential for dynamic interaction, shared decision-making in a collaborative setting certainly could emerge going forward, in my opinion. Will this new structure save us money? This plan, if fully implemented, will provide for more focus on missional application of resources and the ability to speak into issues fiscally more broadly. The church has demonstrated fiscal prudence across many years and operates on a balanced budget, always avoiding deficit spending, and has not gone to the church for increased USF support in recent times. There have also been strategic initiatives advanced, and with the realignment of existing resource streams, these possibilities are enhanced. If you didn't understand the gobbledygook of that paragraph, this is what it means. This plan calls for a reassignment of resources. It does not call for a reduction in USF assessment. Number 4, is this too big a responsibility for one person? My dear friend Bobby Temple, who was CEO of Wesleyan Pension Fund prior to his untimely death, habitually answered such questions by saying, "It depends." And so it is with this matter. It depends. Beyond the leadership capacity of the GS, the major contributing factors, in my opinion, are the support structure that would be in place, the shared leadership process, and the constituency expectation. While we do not want to draw our examples only from business and government, it is abundantly clear that organizations larger than ours by several quantum leaps can be and are effectively led by a single leader. As pointed out earlier, this has been and is presently also true at most levels of our own church and a variety of other religious bodies. Any structure can work effectively if leadership capacity, support system strength, and constituency expectation are in alignment. Last question for me, will this structure guarantee growth? No, it will not. There's no structure that guarantees growth. Conversely, there's no structure in and of itself that guarantees a lack of growth. However, there's a plethora of anecdotal evidence of positive forward kingdom movement in local churches and districts which are effectively led by a single leader and where strong support systems are functioning. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, words that I know bring you great hope. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a matter of right and wrong. This is not a matter of seeking to proof text some preferred outcome. This is not a matter of absolute principle. It's a matter of preference. It's a matter of choice. It's a matter of authorizing a structure that we corporately believe can assist the church in arriving at the preferred outcomes of church health and a culture of sustained growth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for these moments in which I have sought to fulfill the assignment that was given to me. As delegates may choose to address questions to the General Board, the committee thought it would be helpful to have a couple of persons assigned as responders, and so Isaac Smith, the DS of Dakota, and Harry Wood, the DS of Penn Jersey, were asked and have agreed to assist in this way. This is not intended in any way to limit any delegate from asking any question of any other board member, nor is it intended to limit the participation of any other board member. It is only an attempt to have identified responders in place to assist in the ongoing discussion and debate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. The chair will remind the delegates of something I forgot to tell you about in the first place, and that is that our speeches in our debates will be limited to 10 minutes per speaker, and by the rules of debate, a person may only speak no more than twice to the same matter, and we will have the Assistant General Secretary as our timekeeper. He'll let the chair know if you're getting close to that 10-minute mark, and I will probably wave my little orange flag to let you know you're nearing the end of your time for speaking. That speech was within the time limit by the chairman's watch, and so we turn now to others for debate. Dr. Haynes, if you'll go to microphone 3, please.
Mr. Chairman, I express appreciation that you've made it possible for me to physically present my remarks on this.
If we can, Dr. Haynes, we'll need you to pull the microphone as close to yourself as you can, or we need the sound text to increase the volume a little bit.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. I first of all want to express words of commendation on the composition of the memorial that is before us. Having had a little bit of experience in writing for the discipline and for amendments of it, it's a special kind of literature. And the wording and the phrasing and everything of this resolution was a delight to me to read as far as the form of the resolution was concerned. However, I want to point out some things this morning that I hope will help us. If we approve these resolutions, we will have to disregard lessons from our own history. We have had experience with single leadership. Both of our precedent bodies, the Pilgrim Holiness Church and the Wesleyan Methodist Church, had single leadership for a significant period. The Pilgrims had a single superintendent from 1930 to 1958, and then went to a multiple superintendency. The Wesleyan Methodist had gone for 104 years with no central leader, and then had one general president from 1947 to 1959, changing to a multiple superintendency 1 year after the Pilgrims. The Pilgrim superintendent had died in office. Dr. Roy S. Nicholson was the Wesleyan Methodist leader. His health was broken, although he was only in his 50s. When Dr. Nicholson was retired and nearing the end of his life, the 4 general superintendents at that time of the Wesleyan Church visited him in North Carolina. He pled with us, "Gentlemen, whatever you do, don't ever let the church go back to a single leader." The burden of the single leader was too much, even though both churches at that time were only small fractions of the size of the present-day Wesleyan Church. It is interesting that some businesses and some large local churches have experimented with multiple leadership. In a book entitled Built to Last by James C. Collins and Jerry I. Porras, the authors compared successful businesses that endured through changing conditions with those that were stagnant or declining because they could not hold on course through changes. They compared one company which had done away with the chief executive officer and replaced that with the chief executive office occupied by 3 persons of equal authority. The other company stuck with the single leader. The company with the 3 leaders had been able to maintain continuity, innovation, and growth because this arrangement kept them on track with their mission and vision, even through times of crisis, such as the sudden and unexpected departure of one of the leaders. The single leader company experienced catastrophic discontinuity due to the departure of a series of single leaders, with disastrous transitions floundering over a new leader and a new direction. The Wesleyan Church has team leadership. Why risk a tumultuous period of transition which brings no assurance of improvement? If we were to have a single leader, you would have all of that person's gifts and strengths, and also all of that person's faults and weaknesses. If you have multiple leaders, you have a multiplication of gifts and strengths, and while you also have a larger total of faults and weaknesses, the larger total of gifts and strengths stand a better chance of offsetting the faults and weaknesses. Multiple leaders can hold each other accountable. A single denominational leader is often difficult to hold accountable, as one major denomination discovered a few years ago. We have provision for the accountability of strong CEO pastors through the district structure. We have provision for the accountability of district superintendents and general officers through the general superintendency. And multiple general superintendents can hold each other accountable. And believe me, it has happened from time to time. The plan has been presented as a means of increasing our rate of growth. While church structure can affect the progress of the church positively or negative, changing structure brings no assurance of anything. There is no single or perfect structure for growth, and none that in and of itself prevents it. God has blessed the Church of Jesus Christ and caused it to grow with unbelievable rapidity under virtually every kind of structure, and there have been abysmal failures under every kind of structure. We have the advantages of multiple leadership. Let's not risk losing them in an experiment with single leadership. Now, there's a couple of other comments that I want to make. As we looked at this resolution today, the resolution speaks rather negatively about the present state of the church. And yet on Saturday evening, we celebrated what God has been doing in such a wonderful way that I felt there was discontinuity between the resolution and what we were expressing appreciation for. As to the divisions compared to the departments, I have felt that the departments provided a more sharply focused assignment for each general officer, while what's coming under the divisions, there are several things lumped together for two of them that seem to me to spread a general officer too broadly. And so I would speak against the resolution and in favor of maintaining our present structure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. You've heard a speech opposed to the resolution. Is there someone who'd like to speak in favor of it? All right. Anyone else desiring the floor? Yes. Microphone 7.
Dave Tippy, Indiana North Lake. Three terms or three concepts come to me from the whereases, and I'm not debating the whereases, but I would like an explanation of how the single general superintendent model would increase our missional intentionality. Secondly, how would it increase our level of accountability? And thirdly, how would it increase our level of coverage, meaning the general superintendent's ability to relate to the local churches, both domestically and worldwide. I will bias my question by saying that I believe that in a multiple leadership model, the intentionality can be developed through 3 strands instead of 1, which we have been told that are stronger than 1. Also, the accountability model, as Dr. Haynes said, is much stronger in my mind when we look at 3 people performing similar functions, all having the best eye of each other's jobs. I'm, in my present job, able to assess and to help people who are on the same level as I am, and that is much more appropriate and effective than anyone above us or below us telling us what we should be doing and holding us accountable. Helping each other is invaluable. And then I'm very concerned about the coverage, the logistics of the single general superintendent being available to energize and to motivate those people on the front, whether it be foreign or domestic. So I would like to address especially the issue of how does one superintendent, one general superintendent, increase the level of missional intentionality? Is it going to be easier for our denomination to develop and pursue a mission and to define its missionality? Or is it better and easier, will it be better and easier for our general superintendents to be held accountable? And I would address that to one of the responders.
All right. The chair is not going to be practicing calling upon responders from the general board. If one of the persons tapped for that opportunity would like to address this question, that would certainly be an opportunity for you now. Or if another member of the general board, I believe to whom the question was addressed, would like to speak. All right. Yes. Microphone 8.
Mr. Chairman, Harry Wood, member of the General Board, in responding to what I perceive to be the 3 basic questions, I will attempt to give some response. It seemed to me like there were 3 questions. One was focus, one was about accountability, and one was about connectional coverage. In terms of focus, it is true that 3 persons can collaborate together and provide a narrow wedge of leadership. However, it would be contrary to the practice at every other level of the church. At every other level of the church, whether it is a local church, whether it is a district, whether it is a college, we have found it best to have singular leadership, providing singular leadership that provides the focus of the institution. That is an observation, and so in consideration of the fulfillment of the missional focus, there was some sense that perhaps with one general superintendent, there would be additional focus, limited focus that would be given to the denomination. The second, in terms of accountability, it is true that if you read this legislation that is before us, apart from others, it would give the impression that there would be a diminishing of accountability. But the fact of the matter is, there is in other legislation related to the relating of the general superintendent to the general board, there is actually a ratcheting up of accountability. And the accountability becomes much more designed toward mission fulfillment than it is toward just a general accountability. And so I would just share that observation that there is accompanying legislation that is proposed that does not diminish the accountability but actually increases it. The third is on connectional coverage, and there is no question that one person cannot do what three did in terms of being geographically present. However, in this system, there is a recognition of the need for shared service and for increased gatherings, national gatherings of groups such as district superintendents, to which the general superintendent relates, and an increase of the number of those meetings rather than the decreasing of them. The other aspect is that this particular model is calling for greater empowerment. Empowerment of districts, empowerment of local leaders, empowerment of shared service, while all the time focusing the missional leadership in a greater precision in seeking to provide leadership to the denomination. So on the one hand, there is the empowerment of service and the release of more persons involved in that service to the church, because you only have one individual. However, that is accompanied by a higher level of accountability back to the first in terms of the focus, the missional focus of the denomination. And that accountability, in some sense, is changing the role of the Board of Generals, the General Board, into being more missional in its own perspective and in its own relationship with the General Superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Microphone 4.
Kevin Goss, the Colorado-Nebraska District. Mr. Chairperson, I'd like to speak in favor of the amendment. John Kaiser, in Winning on Purpose, who has worked very much with denominations and church structures around the United States, speaks to that one of the challenges that we have to address is role clarity. And in that model, one of the reasons that I believe the one general model helps us is that it does make us consistent with what we're doing at the local and district level, but it also helps answer the question, what is it we expect from a general superintendent? When the one question was answered about the coverage issue, I would say that as we look forward to leading in the 21st century, I believe our general superintendent becomes less someone who presides over ceremonies and one who casts vision and direction. The Kaiser model, and obviously it spoke to me because being a high school soccer coach on the side, it used soccer as the analogy. And in it, it described that any leader, whether a local pastor, a regional director, or a national leader, there has to be a balance between the responsibility given, the authority that they have, and then the accountability provided. And he talked about how across the board, the challenges that denominations face, regardless of their government structure, is the lack of role clarity. In it, he speaks to the fact that boards, like in our case, the general board, a district board, a local board, they become the referees, so to speak, and they have two main functions. One is to clarify and define the boundaries. The second is to measure a score, what we deem most important. The goal, so to speak, reminds us of three parameters that they help enforce, and that is our theological boundaries, our ethical boundaries, and our financial boundaries. Within that, the lead official, whether a local pastor, a district superintendent, or in this case, a general superintendent, is the coach. Surrounded by their team and the support structure, the church becomes, so to speak, the players on the field, working to mobilize, in which, in our case, you'd say, what is the score? Well, clearly, it's making disciples. And so in this model, I feel much more in support having one in which we have, so to speak, a head coach, in which we have a collaborative, supportive team, but in that we give clear responsibility, we provide the authority for it, and then a structure of accountability. I believe that as Kaiser Winning on Purpose gives some guidance on this issue, and I'm fully comfortable with the one general superintendent model in providing an effective leadership structure for our denomination.
All right. right. Yes, here to microphone 7.
Mr. Chairman, I am Chad McCullum from the West Michigan District of the Wesleyan Church. I have a question, and that is if we were to draw an organizational chart of one general superintendent, while we have 4 primary departments that would fall under it, if the balance of the legislation that's being proposed today were to pass, how many lines would go back to the one general superintendent? And I don't rise either in support or non-support of the motion. I simply would ask how many lines would draw back to that individual.
All right. Would a member of the General Board like to try to respond to that? The chair can enumerate some of the, chair believes you're asking who the direct reports would be to the general superintendent on an organizational chart. And if the one general and 4 division model were adopted, would be the opinion of the chair based on our structures. There would be 4 division heads. There would be whoever reports directly by request of the general within the organizational structures at headquarters, but at least those 4 division heads. There would be 33 district superintendents. There would be 5 college and university presidents. Any others? That would be the heads of our subsidiary corporations would all be direct reports to the general superintendent, and that would be Wesleyan Investment Foundation, the Wesleyan Pension Fund. They're another subsidiary. Hephzibah Children's Home. There are at least 2 or 3 persons in the structure as envisioned who would also be direct reports. One would be the Chief Financial Officer, currently our General Treasurer. Another would be a Development Officer. Anyone else? Am I forgetting anybody else? I believe I've touched on as many as I can recall. Somebody else will have to do the math. I don't know how many I named. All right, anyone else want to speak to the motion, the memorial? Yes, I see a hand here. I see another hand here. Someone to microphone 2 and someone to microphone 6. Microphone 2.
Ralph Kerr, Western New York District. A couple of speakers previously to me mentioned the accountability factor and indicated that there is some other memorial that speaks to that. I would appreciate it if someone could direct me to which memorial that is. The information that I have in terms of just talking with people is that it may be some format that's under development, but that's not been finalized. And in addition to whatever memorial the previous speaker was speaking to, I'd be interested in knowing what type of format of accountability will be in place, and who will be responsible on at least an annual basis for making certain that that accountability factor is taken into consideration. Secondly, as just a matter of speaking to the question of availability for one general, I'm a member of the DBA in our district, and my recollection is that we had set a date for ordination in the district. We're fortunately that we are expecting to have several ordinates take part in that, and we had some pretty good rationale, it seems to me, as a DBA for selecting a date, only to find that the general was not available on that date, and so the rationale that we had for the date is now having to be changed in order to include the general, and I'm concerned that that may in fact be something that would continue for other districts as well. Thank you.
All right. Microphone 6.
Louise Carlton, and I'm speaking as a layman and speaking as an individual. I'm not representing the Shenandoah district, although I'm from the Shenandoah district. As an educator and a person who's been involved in this church all of my life, I think that we need to have greater connectivity. As I look through the years, I've served on our church boards, I've served on our district boards, I've worked in our colleges, I've served on our college boards, I've been involved in the church. But down through the years, I see that there's less connectivity, there's less involvement with the people. And I don't see how one general can continue to have that connectivity enlarged. Anytime in education, I've been an educator all my life, been a high school principal, elementary principal, dean of women at our colleges. It's through involvement of the total body. And everybody has a share. When we have meetings, it's not the principal that gets to make all the decisions. It's not the director that gets to make all the decisions. It's shared leadership. And I think we need shared leadership to have the totality of the church involved. The church cannot exist without the loyalty of its laymen as well. Its lay people need to be informed. The last time I was here 4 years ago, there was something that took place on the floor that someone I felt had been disrespectful in the way it was addressed. When I went to talk to the person about it, they told me, well, you're just a layman, you couldn't possibly understand. I think lay people need to be involved, they need to be an important part of it, and that leadership includes everyone from the laity all the way up. And communication is the biggest need that we have. In education, schools can't succeed without the teachers, the department heads, everybody being involved. And I think we need to have a greater involvement of the whole body. And I think that one leader or one general hinders that involvement. My mama used to tell me, and she had many sayings, if anybody ever knew her, they know she did. But she used to say to me as a teenager when I tried to tell her I want to do something, she said, Louise, I don't understand it. How come you can never get in the middle of the road? You run straight from one ditch to the other. And having been in the church, I see often the church has run from one ditch to the other as fast as it could. One time we're so strict that nobody can do anything. Then we want to take care of that, so we jump on over to the other side and be as liberal as we possibly can. But we need to think about what we're doing, that it involves and includes everybody, and that these people are moving together in the same direction. So I think that we need more leaders involved, 3 or whatever you want to have, but one I do not think can truly communicate as it should be communicated to the body. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, here, microphone 2. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Isaac Smith from Dakota District. I've heard 3 questions in the last 2 speakers. Hopefully I heard them correctly, and I'll try to answer them in the response of some of the discussion because those questions are indeed legitimate and have been raised and discussed at some length with the General Board. I'll address that last one first. The idea of shared leadership, and now my personal opinion that peoples trump structure almost always. So it is the hope and anticipation, and I think a realistic anticipation, that we will elect, if we go to one general superintendent model, we will elect a person who will indeed look for collaborative, cooperative, and shared leadership. If we don't, that will have been a mistake. If we do, then we probably do have that shared leadership model. In fact, it is part of the discussion of the General Board. The vote of this body in time alone will see if we are accurate, but it is part of our hope that this structure will tend to flatten a system rather than make it more hierarchical. It will flatten a system, as Dr. Wood has stated, by empowering, giving more authority and more power to subsidiary levels, to district levels, to local levels, all of those in a more collaborative kind of a model. So I hope there's shared leadership. The question of accountability has come up a couple of times. The General Board already has implemented a system of accountability for the general superintendents that is unprecedented. and currently is reviewing by the executive board of the general board, reviewing the general superintendents. The assumption is that that will be improved and enhanced, and it is the discussion and belief of at least a majority of the general board that holding one person accountable is easier than holding a group accountable. We will look at that model in a local church level to say that a lead or senior pastor is that person that we can hold accountable rather than to hold an entire staff, for instance. Same thing in a district model. If my district all of a sudden goes in the tank, guess whose fault that is? It's not hard to find that person, that's me. Whether right or wrong, that person bears the responsibility for that. So it is our hope to hold that. Now, the other question that's being raised, this whole issue of connectivity and whether or not a single general superintendent can show up at all of our events. And anybody can do the logistics and math and understand that gets more difficult. That's a fact. On the other hand, it is assumed, for instance, for ordinations, it is assumed that a general superintendent will ask for and receive the help of general superintendent emeriti who would be available to go to ordination services so that the elected general superintendent would not have to be at every one of those events, but would still have the dignity and honor and authority of the general church to be present physically. It is obvious that one general superintendent cannot be at all district conferences. Recently, though, we've been implementing in many places the model of district superintendents chairing that district conference. That has received a wonderful amount of positive feedback. There probably would still be a representative. The general superintendent would be at most of those. That's possible. Would have video greetings perhaps at others, and would have a representative of the general church present at those district conferences. So in some ways, yes, to every local entity there will be a decreased amount of availability. But we are thinking more strategically to say that we believe that general superintendent can be available to other leaders. This is part of the flattening down of the hierarchical system. Obviously, it's the will of this body whether that's a good idea or not, but that is at least the rationale behind some of those questions. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Others? Any other comment? Yes? All right. Microphone 4. Please remember the chair is at the disadvantage of having bright light shining this way, and we'll do our best to see you. It helps if you wave your flag a little bit, and we want to be sure if you have desire to speak that we recognize you. Microphone 4.
Mr. Chairman, Dan Leroy, North Carolina East and General Board. I just want to express why I personally support the one general concept. It's very simple. I want to be part of a church that appreciates and values that the person who is asked to be the leader is asked to be, number one, the spiritual leader of this church. And that we can do all of that massive administrative responsibility at other levels, but we need to restructure this position to put a spiritual leader at the head of this church. Now, in saying that, people may think that I'm implying that that hasn't been happening. It has been happening. We are blessed with the level of integrity and courage of our top leaders. But we've also piled a bunch of stuff on top of them that has inhibited their ability to primarily be spiritual leaders. And I want to be part of a church that gets back to that value, that takes a lot of that administrative stuff off of the lead person and puts them back where they're supposed to be, primarily a spiritual leader. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Microphone 7.
Wayne Waker, Central New York. I don't know that this proposal accomplishes what Dan is hoping for if we have up to 40 direct reports to one general superintendent. This is obviously quite a radical proposal, and it really changes our whole denomination from what was once a more grassroots-driven movement to hopefully a top-driven movement. And whether that will happen or not, I don't know. I have been told by those in general leadership in days gone by that there's been no successful thing that's been launched in the denomination that really was launched at the top, that it tended to flow out of the life and the spontaneity at the grassroots level. I think, as I read the job description that's proposed for this person, that is extremely broad, totally unrealistic, and I have no idea how one person really would ever fulfill it. I think that we're looking to a structural change where our problem is a spiritual issue. And that if we had the proper motivation, if we really saw people as being lost, if we really had a greater intentionality to share the gospel and to go into some of the hard places that we have been celebrating in these recent general meetings, we would see the growth that we want. And so I question whether this whole change is going to accomplish what we're hoping for. The goal of greater growth is obviously worthy, and we need that. But I think I've been in this job now for a few years, and I have never had a general, I have never found the structure ever stepping in to keep me from doing what I thought should be done in Central New York. And in that sense, as far as I can tell, superintendents have had extreme freedom to lead in the way that they thought that they should. And for me, I don't need any more authority. I don't need any more power given, nor do I think local pastors do. I am curious in this one statement that whatever we do here, if we adopt this, must be followed by district and local alignment for missional purposes. What does that mean? Has that been thought out? Could somebody explain that to me? If so, I would appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Others who desire to speak? All right, over here, microphone 6.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Greg Reynolds, Shenandoah District, and I've appreciated the comments and the thoughts of all who have spoken here today. I know it makes me think, makes me process a bit more. A couple of things that I would say, I think that would support the one leader model, the one general superintendent model, would be that any leader who has responsibilities that he or she are assigned, they find a way to get those done. I'm not for sure if I know any leader that he or she does everything themselves. Perhaps they are responsible for a list of 10 things and they can handle 3, and they delegate 7 out. And so I think a good, strong leader would have the ability to get hers or his work done. I think another thing that the conference should take into consideration at this time are the leaders that would perhaps become available in a one-leader model versus the model that we have. We have some wonderful, great leaders in this denomination who are currently leading in local churches and districts, and probably they would not make themselves available in the multiple system. They would not feel comfortable using their gifts and graces. I don't think that they would perhaps feel that they could use those exhaustively. But if we went to the one model, all of a sudden, we may have some leaders arise that we would be thrilled and proud to have leading our denomination.
Thank you. All right. Any others? Are you ready to vote? Chair believes you are ready to vote on this memorial. We'll vote by electronic device. And you'll have two options. The chair is going to ask you, please don't vote until you're so instructed. There may be special instructions as we move through this, and just because this pops up on the screen, we don't want you to start voting right away, lest the timer have to be reset. But you are voting on the resolution of for Memorial 345, that the General Conference adopt the one general superintendent and 4 division model of general church leadership. As you vote, you'll press number 1 if you're voting yes. You will press number 2 if you are voting no. And at this time, we'll give you the opportunity to vote. If you'll please vote. All right, voting is concluded. Yeses have it. And it requires a majority vote, so you have adopted resolution number 345. Mr. Secretary, do you have a vote? Do you have a motion, Ron?
Okay, you have a motion. Mr. Chair, I move the immediate implementation of Memorial 345.
All right, is there support? There's a motion with support for the immediate implementation of Memorial 345. Any discussion? For those of you that may be unfamiliar with this process, this body has the authority to make things we adopt here, as long as they are not constitutional changes, effective immediately. It does require a 2/3 vote to implement something immediately. And so the motion before you is to take the action in Memorial 345, make it effective immediately. This would allow us to move on to care for other items of business that will be necessary. Any discussion on making this effective immediately? All right, Chair believes you're ready to vote. If you will please say aye if you're in favor of making Memorial 345 effective immediately. Please say aye. Aye. If you're opposed, say no. It is carried.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I move we suspend the rule in Discipline 1590 sub 16 requiring a yes/no vote for incumbent general superintendent, so that a body can then use an open ballot for the election of a single general superintendent.
All right, is there support? There is a motion with support that we suspend the rule in Discipline 1590 sub 16, which is a requirement that incumbent general superintendents be reelected by a yes/no ballot, with any open superintendent position then being conducted by open ballot. Suspend the rules. Help me for just a moment. Parliamentarian, suspend the rules is 2/3 vote. Debatable, right? Yes, it is. All right, this motion is debatable. We'll turn to you for discussion of whether you would like to suspend the rule Discipline 1590-16, calling for a yes/no ballot on the decision to reelect an incumbent general superintendent. All right, if you are ready to vote, when you suspend the rules, you are simply saying for this particular item of business, we won't follow the practice we had decided previously as long as we're not violating our Constitution. So if you are in favor of suspending the rule, calling for a yes/no ballot on the reelection of incumbent general superintendents, will you say aye? If you're opposed, say no. And the chair believes that has carried, so we will suspend the rule. At the time for the election of the general superintendent, we will use an open ballot. We come now to Memorial 346. Due to the length of this memorial and the fact that it has been in the delegates' hands for quite some time, would it be your pleasure to dispense with the reading of the memorial? Does the chair hear any objection? If you object to that and you want to hear the whole thing read, let me know. All right, the chair hears no objection. No. Again, because of the length of this memorial, the chair is going to try to help us process this by letting you know that the first several pages of the memorial are actually strikeouts of paragraphs 1900 through 1935, which are currently in the discipline, relating to the function and the general regulations and job description of the general superintendents when we had multiple general superintendents. And if you will turn in the memorial past all of those strikeouts to the bold type, you will find the new language that is being proposed, which we will take by section. And the chair is going to ask you to look at first at paragraph 1900. As we move through the document, I will break it up into sections so that we can manage the lengthy document a little more appropriately. So we'll ask first if there are any amendments or questions regarding paragraph 1900, the new language being proposed. This is for the function, describing the function of the general superintendent. There is one typographical error in this. In the last sentence of paragraph 1900, it should say the result will be. Does yours say the result with be? All right, please change with to will. How many public school teachers do we have here that like proper grammar? All right. All right, so the result will be that hope and holiness will spread through the globe. Please make that correction. All right, are you happy with paragraph 1900 as proposed? Chair believes you are. Let's move on to the second section, which is paragraph 1903, general regulations related to the general superintendent, requiring them to be elected from among the ordained ministers of the denomination. It states that they are an ex officio member of the General Conference and the General Board, the Executive Cabinet. Any questions regarding that? Any offered amendments? All right, let's move on to paragraph 1909, the term of service and amenability and other regulations for the general superintendent are set forth as the same as those for general officials elsewhere in the discipline. All right, let's look at paragraph 1935, and this will be the most lengthy portion of this memorial. We will try to process this one page at a time. I believe my numbering is the same as their delegate. Is our numbering the same as the delegate packets? Pardon? Is the numbering the same as the delegate packets, Ron?
Should be.
All right. All right, on page 14, we'll ask you to take a look at any items down through sub-paragraph 17. Are there any questions or offered amendments related to the job description of the general superintendent in those first 17 items? Chair is going to pause to give you a moment to look through those. All right, if you are happy with those and offering no amendments on those, if you'll turn the page. Are we all on page 15 in your delegate packets? All right, are there any questions or offered amendments on items 18 through 32? Yes. Microphone 7.
Bud Bence, Indiana North. Just for clarification, on these pages we are seeing words executive board and words executive cabinet. It might be helpful to clarify to the body what that distinction is.
Yes, thank you. The executive board is a representative portion of the general board. There are two representatives from each of our there are 4 representative areas, and there are 2 no, there aren't. No. Maybe I ought to read the discipline and find out how many serve on the executive board. We have from each of the representative areas. All right. So there are 4 representative areas. We have a lay and a clergy delegate or representative elected from the members of the general board, and then the general superintendents. You at this time would have 8 representatives elected from the membership of the general board and the general superintendent for an executive board that consists of 10 persons. The executive cabinet is the headquarters staff. As we move through and elect the 4 persons who will serve as division heads, they and the general superintendent, along with any other individuals invited to sit as honorary members but without a vote, such as the chief financial officer or other such persons, would serve as the executive cabinet. Executive cabinet serves inside the headquarters operation, and the executive board is an extension of the general board. All right? All right, any other questions related to 18 through 32? All right, let's turn the page, and subparagraphs 33 through 45 in the proposed general superintendent job description are before you. Any questions related to any of these items? Are you ready to move on to the next page? Page 17, subparagraphs 46 through 52. In fact, if you want to turn the page, there are just a couple of more subparagraphs. We'll finish the remainder of the general superintendent's job description. Any questions or offered amendments? Yes. Microphone 3.
Jeff Mansell, delegate from Greater Ohio District. One of the items that concern me in going to a single general is the amount of work that's being placed upon that individual. And the job description as being described in this particular document seems to me a bit strenuous for any one individual to care for, when there are certain items I believe that could be delegated out to other individuals. Not knowing for certain what all might be appropriate, is there a way in which the general board can be empowered to modify this before next general conference if we find ways that make it a more functional way to operate? For instance, I look at the document and going back to page 16, subparagraph 42, actually probably 43 might be a better case, to consult with district boards of administration concerning purchase of and location and encumbrance of properties. I would like to think that we could delegate that down the food chain a little bit and not to have to put that in the hands of a general superintendent to care for that kind of item. Also, the one just above it, number 42, Education and Clergy Development Division ought to be empowered to be able to do those surveys and assessments without having to make that the responsibility of our general superintendent to care for. I'm not sure in this body we want to begin breaking this apart, because I could see 3 or 4 other areas that could be similarly treated. But I would hate to think that we would lay this upon our general superintendent entire 4 years without having some ability to modify this midterm to a more manageable document, since we really don't know at this point what, how this is all going to work out. And as a second point, and this is just personal, I'm having a little difficulty legislating to our general superintendent the necessity, or that they have to have an accountability partner and have to participate in educational networks. I think they ought to. I think there's benefit in it, but I'm not certain that legislating it in this particular body that becomes our discipline is the place for that to be cared for. Might be better in a policy manual that is cared for at the general church level than in our discipline.
All right. It would be the opinion of the chair, in response to your question about the possibility of modifications to this, that would not be in order. It's not a power of the general board to change the discipline in which we're placing this job description. So the chair does believe it's the duty of this body, as best as it can, to refine the job description so that it reflects what you're expecting of a general superintendent. There are certain flexibilities that can be worked out. Certainly a general superintendent could interpret their fulfillment of their assigned responsibility to have been accomplished by supervising others and taking care of the jots and tittles and crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's. So there would be the flexibility of the general superintendent accomplishing these duties, although accomplishing them through the agency of others. So the opinion of the chair would be that we can't give carte blanche authority to the general board to change the job description that you have adopted here and made part of the discipline. However, we have the opportunity now to make amendments, and if there are major items, we certainly welcome offered amendments for those. Were you asking for the floor one more time? All right. We are at the time for recess for lunch. We'll hear this comment, and then we'll move to other business.
Well, first of all, a correction. I misrepresented. Number 42 has to do with the transfer of ministers.
Yes.
It was number 27, I believe, that I was referencing, that has to do with the administrative surveys.
All right.
I will need to write this up since I'm being short-noticed here, but I would move to strike item number 27 and item number 43, subparagraphs, from this job description for our general superintendent. That
All right.
would be the items, subparagraph 27 and subparagraph 43.
All right, there's a motion to amend by striking subparagraph 27 and subparagraph 43. Is there support? Chair hears no support. All right, the chair now hears support. And this will be taken up as we come back from our lunch break. And we'll be reconvening here at 1 o'clock. We do ask you please to be in your places ready for business at 1 o'clock. We are in recess now and for lunch until 1 o'clock.